February 23rd, 1945. The Iwo Jima Mountain Suribachi. In a concrete tunnel, Private First Class Tadashi Yamamoto sat down and wrote with shaking hands that would have been executed if his own men had found out. The Marines are not people. Men should die like everyone else. We were told lies about how weak the U.S. was. Through the slit for shooting, he had just seen something that went against everything he had been taught during training. 6 soldiers stormed his position while being shot at with machine guns. 3 fell, but the rest stayed. Moving ahead. When his friends set off a barrage of grenades, one sailor took the hits, blasted with his body to protect his team, and then he kept fighting even though he was badly hurt until he was unable to hold his gun. Within minutes, the survivors took up the position. 21,000 Japanese troops stayed in. Iwo dug 18 kilometers of caves and walls to protect himself. It was said that they would face soft American troops who would give up when pushed. Instead, what they found would change every military judgment. The Imperial Japanese Army had made about the people they were fighting. The math behind this mistake was being written down. Not in long-term plans, but in the ugly reality of close battle that would leave 26,000 Marines as deaths in just 36 days. Japan's trust had been falling for a long time. Before Iwo Jima, August 7th, 1942, the Guadalcanal into the Solomon Islands. Corporal Hideo Takahashi, who had been in the China War before, Japan seemed unbeatable at first, wrote in his notebook after the first week of fighting. The U.S. people. They are not like any other enemy we have faced. When cornered, they don't run away. They don't give up when their situation is now hopeless. Worst of all, they fight at night, as if being in the dark makes them stronger. Fear. Japan's first defensive fight in the Pacific was at Guadalcanal. The Imperial Japanese Army thought it would be easy to beat the inexperienced American troops. That was the 1st Marine Division that came ashore. There were just over 16,000 men. Military intelligence in Japan had Marines were called top troops, but they were still Americans and came from a soft, democratic society that put the happiness of each person above the sacrifice of the group. In just a few days, every assumption proved to be terribly wrong. Lieutenant Shigeru Fukudome led a second, stronger company that was told to retake Henderson Field on August 20th night. The 200 guys in his unit beat Chinese groups 3 times as big as them. They moved forward in a textbook way, sure that Americans would freak out in the dark. The Marines were waiting in properly set up spots with moving fields of fire together. Fukudome's business went into a dangerous area. What happened next went against all of Japan's military rules. Instead of building defenses and forts, the Marines right away launched an assault into the darkness using highly accurate automatic weapons. A diary of Fuku recovered 3 days after his death and wrote down how shocked he was. They came at us in evening. We're the ones who attack at night. They went through jungle that we thought was impossible to get through. They killed in quiet, and then it was gone. By dawn, only 90 guys from my company were still there. The U.S. people, 12 people had been killed. It happened again and again across Guadalcanal. From Japan, forces used to facing enemies that were easily defeated by banzai charges found Marines who were still in place. They fought with bayonets, knives, and fists until they were physically wiped out. This is Sergeant Kenji Matsumoto, who wrote in a letter that was read by American intelligence that he had lived 4 months on the Guadalcanal before being evacuated. We were told that Americans are selfish and won't make sacrifices for their friends. This is not true. I saw a Marine with 2 broken legs keep firing a machine gun until Japanese soldiers were killed. Him far away. Right away, his helper took the gun and started firing again. That's where we lost 40 men. The Japanese military didn't understand the Marine training that made these troops. Analysts. Before going up against Marines on Iwo Jima, Private Yamamoto first. It was during intelligence meetings in 1943 that they were known. The teacher was a staff officer who had interviewed captured Marines, and they looked really upset. The American Marines go through training that in any other army would be illegal and illegally abusive. They're broken up, emotionally and physically, and then rebuilt into something that doesn't look much like the weak civilians who came in. They're told that dying in battle was an honorable thing to do and that they should never give up until they could no longer fight. This sounds, they did copy our Bushido, but they added something we didn't expect. American business ability too. The mix turned out to be very bad. Japanese troops learned how to Bushido said that death was better than shame, but they fought with gear that was getting worse and worse. American weapons. Marines had almost as hard of training as Japanese forces did, which made them warriors just as tough as the Japanese, as ready to die. But when those Marines arrived, they had so much firepower that the Japanese positions were no longer safe. November 20th, 1943. On the island of Tarawa, Rear Admiral Kei Shibasaki led 4,500 troops in what were thought to be impregnable defenses. In just 76 hours, the 2nd Marine Division showed him he was wrong. One of only 17 Japanese to be in private first class was Tadashi Ogawa. Survivors told the interrogators what he saw. The first wave was wiped out in the water. We killed many people. Read more. The craft showed up. The second wave died at the shore. More showed up. The third wave flamethrowers helped us get to our places. They didn't stop until they or we were dead. The math was really hard. In 76 hours, almost 64,100 men died on Tarawa. The Marines who made it out alive showed that they would take any goal no matter what it took. Things that were found on Saipan in 1944 made public Japanese intelligence files that called Marines shock troops who are completely devoted to their goals. Marines say no orders to withdraw and will fight back even if they are in a worse position tactically. Casualties among Marines don't make the unit less effective until it's totally destroyed. Put an end to the quote. This division came about after a lot of research. Captain Yoshio Kobayashi, who made it out alive Guadalcanal, the similarities were very clear. The way the American Army trains its troops is good. Normal and normal. The Marines do things differently. They move forward quickly, no matter how many people die. They put up with death rates that would make any sensible leader stop. This is never before seen. The Marines' speed was just as destructive as their weapons. Lieutenant Colonel Kunio Nakagawa, who was in charge on Peleliu, made plans for protection. Because of past wars where American troops took a break after landing, the Marines didn't stop at all. They got there September 15th at 8:30 a.m. and had control of half the airport by the time it got dark. His shock was written down in Nakagawa's notebook. My defense plan didn't work because I thought the enemy would act in a sensible way. The Marines do not make sense. They no matter what, you must act with complete dedication. This complete dedication showed up in various ways that looked like suicide to Japanese onlookers, but worked horribly well. Staff Sergeant Kenji Matsumoto, people who were taken on Bougainville said they saw a Marine platoon attack a fortified hilltop position. The method used was on open land that was hit by 3 bunkers machine gun fire. From Japan, the strategy would have called for a lot of preparation with artillery and then an attack by infantry with smoke in the background. The Marine officer looked at the situation for about 30 seconds and then ordered the attack without any planning. The squadron went straight into the fire. In the first 20 seconds, 7 guys fell. When the survivors got to the first cave, they used grenades and demolition charges to blow it up. 3 more men died. Getting into the second cave, the Marines who were left took it. The last 5 guys took down the 3rd bunker. Being still, 12 of the 37 men in the platoon died, taking a position we thought couldn't be broken. From the order to the end result, the whole thing took 4 minutes. That wasn't brave. This was a planned use of acceptable deaths to get things done faster than we could react. Japanese leaders who were taught to value their soldiers' lives in the war were horrified by the idea of acceptable casualties. In the context of reaching goals, Marines thought that deaths were the price of success and paid that price without complaining. There was reluctance when the goal called for it. This gave them a psychological edge that went beyond having more stuff. Japanese leaders had to make tough choices because they knew Marines would take 50% casualties to take a position. You defend yourself with too little force and lose the situation. Use enough force to defend, but weaken other areas. Give up the job and plant seeds in the ground. There was only one way to lose. The only timing was an unknown. Major Yoshi Takahuri, who was in charge of staff on Iwo Jima, who lived through the fight, talked about this problem in interrogations after the war. It was clear to General Kuribayashi that we couldn't stop the Marines. Their defenses were made to slow them down and hurt them. highest number of deaths. We were incredibly successful at killing people. In 36 days, more than 20,000 Marines were killed or hurt. It would have stopped any other military force from continuing offensive actions. The Marines got stronger and kept striking with the same level of intensity. We worked out that inflicting 10,000 deaths would stop their progress for at least a week. 10,000 of them died in the first battle. Weak, and they never stopped moving forward. This showed what the basic mismatch was. They could replace people who were hurt faster than we could. In the Pacific, they had 50 Marine units or getting trained in the U.S. We had a limited number of guards on each island. The math told us we would lose. The math was more complicated than easy manpower. Marines arrived with supplies that made it possible for operations to continue at Japanese levels of intensity the troops were not able to match. Toshio Yamamoto, second lieutenant, was caught on Saipan, saw the difference for himself during a raid at night. 3 days after they landed, I led a raid to check out where the Americans were. They thought they would find tired troops with few supplies, like the Japanese would have after 3 days of heavy fighting. Battle at a disputed beachhead. Instead, we saw Marines eating hot food and getting more ammo by truck, with tents for medical care for Tamatams injured and rest places where the units turned away from the line. Their supply dumps had more guns than mine did. The whole regiment had. They had mobile kitchens that made fresh food. They had temporary toilets and places to do laundry. In the Pacific War, this was the most intense battle ever. We're doing better than we were in camp. This proved that it was impossible to beat them. They'd always have enough of food, weapons, medicine, or spare parts. Yes, we would. The never-ending American logistics led to a type of attrition combat that favored the Marines, even though they lost more soldiers at first. The Japanese defenders fought from fixed posts and didn't have any extra help or supplies. All of the victims were for good. Every round of ammo that was used up could not be replaced. Marines and was fought from a beachhead that was growing. Supplies came every day by ship and air. The injured were taken to safety and then replaced. There was plenty of ammunition. The more time, the longer the battle went on, the weaker the Japanese fighters got, and the stronger the Marines got. This factor proved to be critical. Colonel Nakagawa's defense on Peleliu ran from September 15th to November 27th. The 1st Marine Division lost so many soldiers that was taken out and replaced in October by parts of the 81st Infantry Division. The activities of the 2nd Marine Division went on until they were relieved by Army units. The fight that Japanese leaders planned, what was supposed to last 1 week, took 11 weeks. The Japanese troops did over 10,000 Americans were killed, but the Americans could afford those deaths. Carry on striking. Japan couldn't pay that much to protect every island. The math couldn't be kept up. By the middle of 1944, it was clear to the Japanese military leadership that it could not go on. Garrison leaders were given intelligence summaries that said Marines could not be stopped, only held up. One paper found on Tinian gave instructions that showed full giving up on any chance of winning. When protecting against a Marine attack, do not think that you will be able to keep your job forever. The goal is to keep the Americans from moving forward long enough to help reach other strategy goals. It's worth it to stand up every day. Each Marine who is killed or hurt is important, but keep in mind that the place will go down. Get ready properly. Stock places with the most ammunition. Make protective positions that are redundant. Make a plan to go back in steps. Take that into account. In defense, you'll probably die. The Empire now has more time thanks to your sacrifice. This is a brave thing to do, even if they lose. This somber math laid out Japan's defense plan for the last year of the Pacific War. Defenders stopped trying to win fights. They fought to make those battles so expensive that the U.S. might decide not to attack Japan, but instead talk things out with Japan itself. Marines by taking deaths that other armies would have had to. Stopping this approach didn't work. They paid what was asked of them and kept going. Moving ahead. There were no costs that were too high. It wasn't possible to be too strong. It was rude never stopped. Private Tadashi Gawa, one of the few people who lived through Tarawa, later talked about how facing such an enemy affects your mind. We knew we were going to lose after the first day of fighting. There were a lot of Marines on the ground. They used naval guns to destroy our posts. They had air, help that bombed us over and over. They wouldn't believe we could make them pay such a terrible price, though. Think twice about future attacks. Then we saw them keep striking, even though a lot of people were dying. They walked, with machine guns that killed a lot of people. After them came more Marines. We also killed them. More showed up. We fought for 3 days with full dedication. We killed tens of thousands of people. We Marines took Tarawa on time after almost all of them had died. They paid the price we asked for and kept going. They moved across the Pacific. At that point, we knew the war was over. Making success cost a lot, can't beat an enemy who will do anything to win. This idea spread through the Japanese military as people who had been in each fight told others about their experiences. Next, when Marines arrived on Iwo Jima in February 1945, every Japanese soldier knew they were up against the toughest enemy in the Pacific. They knew they were going to die. I was sure the Marines would take the island. There was only one question left. How many Marines would die with them? In general, Kuribayashi's defense plan took these facts into account and built its strategy around them. What he told the troops admitted what government propaganda said wasn't true. This fight is lost for us. We can only hurt the Americans more with each step they take. That's what we need to do. Give up on life. Hurt with loss of life. Hold up their progress. Here's how we serve the kingdom when things are at their worst. In battle after battle, this estimate turned out to be right. February 19, 1945, D-Day Onuma gave the Japanese the most complete tactical look at what the Marines can do. It's possible that General Tadamichi Kuribayashi, Japan's best defensive commander in the Pacific, who spent months learning about Marine techniques, making defenses that are especially made to beat them, he did an amazing job of getting ready. But before I tried Kuribayashi's ideas, Marine raiders had shown they could do more than high standards of quality. These elite units carried out deep penetration actions that caused more fear than they should have. Their small group size. The Japanese military learned that pirates could do a terrible job when they were alone, and it was dark. Colonel Kono Ichiki learned this on the Guadalcanal in August 1942, and it killed him. The Chinese were beaten by his 900 men who attacked hard at night. Japanese law said that Americans feared the dark. Ichi made a detailed plan for an attack at night on Marine posts along the Tanaru River. Raiders from the 1st Marine Raider Battalion were set up and ready to go. Ichiki's power waned. Into the river at 1:30 a.m. on August 21st. Raiders opened fire right away. Range with automatic weapons and artillery that has already been recorded. The fight 20 minutes long. More than 700 Japanese people were killed. Marines who died 35 in number. The raiders were finally broken up and merged into regular Marine units in 1944. But their strategies were used all over the Corps. The standard Marine troops used methods that were first used by raiders. The night police kept looking. Small parts made choices on their own. Communication opened up a whole new world of cooperation. This led to an enemy that fought 24 hours a day with a level of energy that the Japanese army could not keep up. Who is Corporal Hideo Takahashi? Fought on 3 islands before being captured on Okinawa, summed up the battle. The Marines did not stop. Day strikes with a lot of firepower. Small units attack at night, getting into our places. Constant gun bombardment keeps people from resting. Attacks from the air happen during the day. We were under fire the whole time, from landing to losing. Forces from Japan. In the past, those who controlled the night could rest and regroup after fights during the day. There was not a break. There was no time to be safe. The fighting never stopped until we were dead or caught. Without pity, this was industrial warfare. The Japanese military analysts were both interested and scared by the industrial side of maritime activities. Not like Japanese Marines joined forces that depended on spirit and personal sacrifice to get around problems caused by lack of resources. Deliberately used the most force possible to solve every issue. When they were in a strong situation, they didn't rely on bravery or smart moves. After figuring out where it was, they sent in artillery that shot hundreds of shells. To destroy it, sent tanks with flamethrowers forward to kill any survivors, and then sent troops to protect the area. What the job is, should the fight not end, naval gunfire from destroyers or the whole area would be destroyed by battleships. This methodical destruction was so effective that it was terrifying. As a forward spotter for artillery on Saipan, Second Lieutenant Saburo Endo kept an eye on Marines use combined guns during the invasion in June 1944. His diary wrote down in-depth views. As the Marines landed, battleships fired on them from behind. That kept firing for 3 hours before the first landing craft touched down on the beach. Planes dropped bombs on our positions, to land 2 hours before it did. Every move was watched when Marines came ashore. Tanks, artillery, naval weapons, and airstrikes all helped. They moved ahead. They destroy everything in their way slowly and carefully. When we stopped them where we had planned, they requested battleship fire, which wiped out hills in its path. They weren't brave or smart enough to try to get around our places. They used superior force to destroy the positions and then move forward. That's not war the way we know it. This is planned destruction of industry that keeps happening until pushback is no longer possible. We fought with guns and small machine guns. They fought with all the power of an entire industrial country. Many Japanese soldiers didn't understand what Endo saw until it was too late. The Pacific War wasn't a test of how brave or good a soldier you were. It was the United States had a huge production potential compared to Imperial Japan's small industrial base. Marines were at the cutting edge of that level of production. Warriors were taught to take advantage of American strengths without mercy, while taking losses that led to more soldiers and replacements. It didn't matter how brave or skilled the Japanese were at battle against this kind of enemy. The result was mathematically set from the beginning. Only the length of time and the cost were fixed. Kuribayashi Japanese lives had been wasted by the Banzai charges in previous fights, so they were banned. He built a strong defense that led Marines to killing zones with various bunkers around them. He set up the guns to fire, a terrible fire on the landing beaches. He dug 11 miles of tubes that linked 1,500 positions in caves. Every route was marked for artillery and mortar fire. The beach was a terrible place to be. On February 19th, Marine companies with 70,000 men arrived on Iwo Jima. The Kuribayashis, the protection worked just as planned. Naval shelling didn't even scratch the defenses. Marines landed in neat groups and took terrible casualties right away. Within minutes, dead and hurt people were lying all over the black volcanic sand. Japanese watchers of artillery called down fire that is perfectly timed. It looked like the attack was failing. After that, something happened that Kuribayashi wasn't ready for, even though he should have known from earlier battles. The Marines did not pull back to regroup. They moved toward the gunfire. They found the holes between Japanese forces and took advantage of them. It was when bunkers stopped the progress that demolition teams moved forward while being shot at to destroy them. Other soldiers took their place when those teams died. The attack never ended. Secret Service Officer First Class Tadashi Yamamoto looked from his right was being attacked by Marines from the bunker. His notebook keeps track of the Japanese soldiers felt confused. A Marine flamethrower team came up to them. The bunker. We killed the person in charge. He had someone else pick up the gun and kept going. We killed him. Someone else in the Marines took the gun. We hurt him very badly. He didn't stop shooting until the gun was empty. Then he threw bombs into the gun ports until we were dead. Him. By that time, the demolition crew had reached the door to the bunker. The job was given up. This took place 30 times in the first hour. How do you beat guys who won't give up? The Japanese soldiers found out the hard way that you couldn't. The harsh math of Iwo Jima showed Marine philosophy in its purest form. 70,000 Marines came ashore. 26,000 people died, including almost 7,000 children. Killed, but all but one of the 21,000 Japanese fighters died. Most of the people who were taken were too hurt or unconscious to fight back. It's hard to imagine what the Marines paid for price, but they got all of their goals. Even Kuribayashi himself, who lived until in late March 1945, he sent a message to Tokyo that was hidden and said this was his final opinion. Fell down. There is no doubt that the Marines are the best fighting force I have ever seen. They have several things that make them especially dangerous. First, their training makes troops ready to take casualties. That would hurt other units. Second, they have 5 times as much weapons and 10 times as much air power as we do. Thank you. Third, choices are made at the squad level by their junior leaders. The decisions our officers make at the company level, which lets them take advantage of chances before we can. Fourth, And the worst thing is that they never stop striking. There is no defense that can keep up with this mix forever. This last point scared Japanese fighters all over the Pacific. People in uniform could accept loss in battle. It makes sense to be outgunned or outmaneuvered. What they didn't understand was an enemy who just would not stop, even if they lost. Company Corporal Hideo Takahashi fought on 3 islands before he was captured on Okinawa, said in an interview after the war, "You must understand the armies would attack, kill people, and then pull back. This was different for Marines and other American troops. To regroup. This is good military advice. Marines would attack, take, and then retreat. They keep attacking over the bodies of their own dead, which is not military strategy. This is something completely different. The trait that made Marines so feared was built on purpose through training that broke recruits until they were almost nothing, and then turned them back into fighters whose identities were tied to the Corps itself." On Saipan, documents were found that included interrogation records of a Marine prisoner who talked about the change into confused Japanese intelligence officers. Boot camp lasts for 8 weeks. During the first 4 weeks, drill teachers destroy everything civilian about the recruit. You are told you are. They tell you that you are useless and that you will never be a Marine. They tell you to quit and join the Army instead. You are physically pushed until you think you can't go on, and then you are pushed even harder. People who quit are seen by everyone. Those who stay learn that giving up is not a choice, according to the interrogation report. Officers answer, "This is like the way we train, but more organized." The Marine prisoner then talked about something that was not taught in Japanese military schools. In the second 4 or 5 weeks, you learn how to be a sailor. Everyone who has ever been a Marine is your brother. You are a part of something bigger than yourself. Marines fought because they thought that failing would betray every Marine who had ever lived. Fighters who would move forward even when common sense told them to stop were made by pressure. This way of thinking was at its strongest during banzai charges that should have worked but didn't. It was terrible. October 24th to 25th, 1944. Colonel Takuya Takasha led about 3,000 Japanese forces in a final attack on Saipan. Banzai charge against Marine posts. Japanese law said that this kind of attack had to be carried out with absolute. The dedication of the Marines would break through any defense with its sheer power and the fear of being overrun. Most of the 27th Infantry Division soldiers who were in the attack's path were at 3:30 a.m. When the charge started, the men were still asleep. Screamed Marine lines, bayonets fixed, overwhelming forward positions through sheer numbers. The theory would call for a fighting retreat to get back on track. Right away, the Marines launched an assault. Officers and sergeants set up desperate defensive posts in important spots. Marines used all kinds of weapons from hand-to-hand fighting with trench knives or artillery firing at point-blank range. The battle went on for 4 hours. When dawn, Japan's dead bodies covered an area 500 meters deep. The number of American deaths, 90 people died, and 247 were hurt. 3,000 Japanese troops died. The private first class Teishi Yoshida was badly hurt in the charge but lived. The questioning of him? A report written 3 days later showed how shocked the Japanese troops were. "We people told us that Americans are afraid of close combat and depend on guns because they are naturally timid. We went after them because they thought they would break. We lost a hand-to-hand fight with them. I saw a soldier. Before he fell, the sergeant killed 7 guys with a bayonet and a gun. This isn't being afraid. Someone lied to us. The lies covered every part of what the Marines could do." Japanese propaganda had been saying for years that Americans were weak and selfish and couldn't endure hard times. Marines slept in foxholes that were full of water and ate cold food. Rations for weeks while fighting in 100-degree heat and 80% humidity went against those claims. From Japan, while soldiers were meant to be trained for hardship, they watched the Marines do well in conditions that pushed the Japanese to their limits. Bounds. Corporal Kenji Matsumoto, who lived through the Guadalcanal before being sent to Bougainville, where he was caught in February 1944, and talked about the difference in specifics. By September 1942, we were only getting rice twice a day, or sometimes even less. We added anything we could find in the woods that was edible. The Marines ate 3 full meals every day, sometimes even more. They were regularly restocked by air and sea. They had new unlimited amounts of water, medicine, and weapons. We saw that we were having to fight a force that would always have resources. It was that understanding that broke something in us. Marines had a lot of material advantages, which was terrible. When faced with fortified bunkers, Marines called in weapons that fired hundreds of shells in minutes and pushed the enemy forward. They used Marine guns that could level hills and Sherman tanks with flamethrowers. If that didn't work, damaged teams would throw hundreds of pounds of bombs at points. Captain Shigeru Fuku, before he died on Guadalcanal, wrote the most in-depth study of combined arms techniques used by the Marines during the war. The Marines do not fight like separate soldiers. They fight together like different parts of a machine. Riflemen set up our position. The machine gunners stop our fire. Mortimer bring us smoke to blind our onlookers. Our bunkers are destroyed by artillery. Tanks move forward and troops will follow. Planes can drop bombs on places that guns can't reach. This takes place inside minutes of communication, which were planned by younger officers using radios. We don't having. We can't fight back because we can't work together quickly enough. The Marines have already moved to take advantage of the situation by the time our leader figures it out and gives orders. Our flaw: Marines delegated power to the lowest level possible, which made this speed of action possible. Japanese law said that choices like these should only be made by captains, not sergeants. Corporals were in charge of attacks that needed in the Imperial Japanese Army, a lieutenant's power. As a result, the enemy changed faster than the Japanese, able to respond. When a Marine advance was stopped by a bunker, a sergeant would quickly change the attack to go through calling in and backing fire in a different way, all without waiting for orders from above. Guardians from Japan Marines often had to fight enemies who came from surprising places because they had identified and used Japan's flaws against them before the Japanese leaders knew they existed. It wasn't guns or artillery that Marines were most afraid of. It was the fireball gun. Japanese troops who had been trained to die honorably in battle found that flamethrowers did not offer an honorable way to die. Death. Corporal Hideo Takahashi was caught on Okinawa with burns all over his body. 40% of his body talked about the effect on his mind. We were taught to be ready to die in battle, as beautiful. Death by gunfire, bayonets, and weapons. These are the deaths of warriors. Fire is not the same. As the flames get closer, you watch them. You can smell your friends on fire. You can hear the "it's loud." This death doesn't bring any glory. It is killing on a large scale. This is what the Marines knew that we didn't. These days, war is not a place for glory. It's about killing the bad guys as quickly and effectively as possible by using the best tools available. This thought came to mind for most Japanese defenses. It was too late. By 1944, every Japanese soldier in the Pacific knew that going up against Marines would mean going up against the deadliest mix of training, gear, and rules the Americans had it. Reports sent to base forces by intelligence agencies said that Marines had a mix of fear and respect that almost seemed like myth. One paper that was found on Tinian in July 1944 gave advice on how to defend against attacks from the sea. Several facts in the study went against what people had been saying for years. Japanese hate speech. First, Marines are usually bigger and stronger than Japanese forces because better nutrition since they were kids. This means that Marines get more ammo. Troops from the Imperial Japanese Army had better weapons and more effective gear. Third, training for Marines stresses marksmanship in a way that Japanese troops can't match. The average Marine with a rifle can hit targets from farther away than our troops can. Fourth, the Marines use air and we can't match or counter their naval help. The fifth and most important, Marines are taught that giving up is not an option. They are going to fight until one of them dies or wins. There's no third choice. The report then gave tactical advice that showed how deeply Japanese trust had fallen down. Marines will not run away when you face them. Do not assume that deaths will bring down their confidence. Do not think that having more people gives you an edge because their firepower cancels out their numerical advantage. If you don't have to, don't try banzai charges. Marines will kill charging men with automatic weapons, guns, and heavy artillery. They fight well at night, so don't think they'll be afraid of strikes at night. The only prepared positions protected by interlocking fields of fire and various fallback positions are the best way to defend against an attack. They were ready ahead of time and knew that the position would finally fall. We don't want to stop the Marines, but to kill as many people as possible before the post is taken over. This plan for defense admitted the truth but didn't offer a way to win. Getting Iwo Jima's defenses ready by General Tadamichi Kuribayashi in early 1945 knew this perfectly. In January, he wrote to his wife, month before they came in. "I've been asked to protect Iwo Jima from the American Marines. There is only one way to solve this math problem. 70,000 Marines will land. They will have all of power over the sea and the air. They will bring as much ammo and supplies as they want. They'll keep attacking until Iwo Jima gives up. The goal is not to beat them. That can't happen. They are going to have to pay such a terrible price that the U.S. will think twice about attacking the home islands. The Empire has to fight every day I keep them at odds. Get ready. In the last fight, every Marine that is killed means there is one less enemy." Bayashi's plan showed how Japan's defensive policy changed over time, from confident aggression to desperate defense. Turnover. When the Marines arrived on Iwo Jima on February 19th, they were met with defenses, meant to hurt them in ways that would weaken American determination, not to push them away. Each bunker was put in place to need to be attacked directly. There were different places to shoot at every cave entrance. Every foot of ground cost to take lives. The plan didn't work because it didn't take into account sea culture. Marine spirit was not broken by a lot of deaths. They made it stronger. All the fallen Marine asked for revenge. Every day of brutal fighting made survivors stronger. Desire to get it. More Marines were sent in when the battle got worse. Fought. The Japanese military didn't understand this because they thought that even the most devoted troops had the breaking point. Tadashi Yamamoto, a private first class who lived until March 10th, the night before he died in his bunker, he wrote his last note in his diary. "The Marines will get there tomorrow for this job. In the last 3 weeks, we've killed a lot of them. More come in. Every day. They don't get weaker. They don't slow down. They don't stop. We believe that our spirit was stronger than the materialistic side of American life. I was wrong. The Marines have both spirit and matter. They are just as brave as we are, and they have guns. Goods that we can't match. They are what we say we are. We are what we said they were. This is the truth we die. Having knowledge." Marines with a demolition team destroyed his bunker the next morning after a 6-hour fight in which 11 people were killed. Attackers and hurt 3 Marines. The position slowed down the Marines' progress by 40 minutes later. Other units went around them and kept moving forward, while battle engineers cut down on the bunker. Over and over again, this trend showed up on Iwo Jima. From Japan, defenders fought with desperate bravery, killing many and winning nothing but their own lives. Deaths. The campaign was over on March 26th. The last numbers told the story of that took place when Marines fought against Japan's strongest defenders. 21,000 defendants from Japan died. 1.6 gave up, mostly because they were unconscious or physically unable to fight back. 2,060 Marines were killed, out of 70,000 men who pledged. Almost 40% of the deaths. Any other Army or Navy, it would have taken months to get better. Marines 3rd, 4th, and 5th. Within 6 weeks, the departments were back to work. This ability to absorb casualties and keeping fighting became the trait that scared the Japanese troops the most. General Kenji Matsumoto, who was captured and jailed in Hawaii, wrote in a 1946 find out how the Japanese forces felt when they saw Marines. "It was awful to know they would never stop. Perhaps, if you kill half of the Marines, the rest will keep attacking. You might be able to hurt their captains and sergeants, would be in charge. No matter how hard you fought, they would come back the next day. There was no way to get it. They would kill you if you didn't stop them. That's not war. That's destruction of each other. The Marines had more men than us too. The United States' ability to make things Japan's military planners were shocked when waves of replacement Marines showed up. Reports on intelligence from late 1944 said that 75% of Marine Division's deaths happened on PLO in September 1944, and then got back to full strength in 3 months. Those when new soldiers arrived on Iwo Jima in February, they fought just as well as the veterans. This ability to grow back Japanese forces were unable to defeat the units they faced. The Army of the Imperial Japanese didn't have a similar training system or a replacement pipeline that could keep unit quality high while taking in totally terrible losses. The United States was efficient in every part of Marine doing things. Within minutes of being hit, Marines who were hurt got medical care. Men who were hurt on the battlefield were taken to hospitals by air and sea. Ship in hours. Antibiotics, blood plasma, and surgery that saved lives, killing more people than ever before in military history. Japan's hurt often died, from not having enough medical supplies, from wounds that got infected, and from injuries that were common in America. Japan soldiers who were captured saw Marines who should have died from wounds that would have killed Japan soldiers. Rather stay alive to fight again. The last humiliation happened when the Japanese gave up in August 1945. Marines took over Japanese home islands, expecting people to fight back, taught to die rather than give up. Instead, they found people who were worn out. Happy that the war was over, Private First Class Tishi Yoshida was sent back to Japan. In 1946, after getting better from wounds, he got on Saipan, his trip back home. We were told lies about everything. That's not what the Marines did. Prisoners. They gave us food, medical care, and a place to stay. They were nicer to us. Not as many as our officers did. The Americans were not wild people. We were the wild people. This information was lost. What little faith we still had in the empire. Thousands of former Japanese soldiers came to the same conclusion. The interrogation reports written after the war showed common themes. Respect for how well Marines can fight. Bitterness toward Japanese leadership that had lied about American capabilities. Recognition that the war had been hopeless from the start because Japan could not match American industrial capacity or the fighting quality of troops like the Marines. The most comprehensive assessment came from General Tadamichi Kurabayashi's final message from Iwo Jima, delivered through desperate radio transmission on March 21st, 5 days before the island fell. He wrote, "I have fought the Marines for 31 days. They are the finest soldiers I have encountered. Their training is superior. Their equipment is overwhelming. Their courage equals ours. And their numbers are endless. Japan cannot defeat such an enemy. We can only die fighting them and hope that our sacrifice buys time for peace negotiations that preserve something of our nation." To my fellow officers preparing to defend the home islands, know this: the Marines will come. You cannot stop them. You can only make them pay in blood for every meter of ground. Perhaps if the price is high enough, they will negotiate rather than destroy everything. That is our only hope. That hope died with the atomic bombs in August. But Kurabayashi's assessment of Marines proved accurate. They were the tip of the spear that broke Japanese defensive lines across the Pacific. They paid a terrible price with casualty rates that would have destroyed lesser organizations. But they never broke, never retreated, never surrendered an objective. They were exactly what Japanese propaganda had claimed the Imperial Japanese Army was: invincible warriors who would fight to death before accepting defeat. The final irony was that Marines achieved this through systematic training and overwhelming material support, not through mystical warrior spirit or racial superiority. They proved that modern warfare required both courage and industrial capacity, both training and technology, both individual sacrifice and national resources. Japan had courage and training. America had everything. The Marines embodied that totality in a way no other American unit matched. Japanese veterans recognized this distinction. Corporal Hideo Takahashi, interviewed in 1975 as an old man, summarized what his generation learned fighting Marines. "We were taught that spirit conquers material, that our will to die made us invincible. The Marines taught us that spirit plus material conquers, spirit alone. They were as willing to die as we were. But they had Sherman tanks and naval gunfire, and unlimited ammunition, and air supremacy, and medical care, and food, and all the resources of America behind them. We had our rifles and our courage and promises of victory. That was not enough. It was never going to be enough." The Marines proved that on every island they took. The statistical record supports this conclusion. Marines fought in every major Pacific campaign from Guadalcanal in August 1942 to Okinawa in June 1945. They suffered 86,000 casualties, including 19,500 killed. But they never failed to take an objective, never abandoned a position once captured, never gave Japanese forces reason to believe Marines could be defeated through superior tactics or fighting spirit. The price was terrible. The results were absolute. Japanese military analysts studying Marine operations after the war reached unanimous conclusions. The Marines represented the ultimate expression of American military power. They combined warrior ethos matching Japanese Bushido with industrial resources matching American production capacity. They trained soldiers willing to die for victory while providing those soldiers with weapons and support that made victory possible. This combination was unbeatable. The lessons learned came too late for the 21,000 Japanese soldiers who faced Marines on Iwo Jima, or the 30,000 who fought them on Okinawa, or the hundreds of thousands who prepared to fight them on the home islands before surrender ended the war. Those men knew only that Marines were the enemy they feared most, the enemy their officers could not stop, the enemy who would keep coming regardless of casualties until every Japanese defender was dead. Private First Class Tadashi Yamamoto's final diary entry, written hours before his death in a bunker on Iwo Jima, captured this knowledge. He wrote, "The Marines will win not because they are braver than we are, not because they want victory more than we do. They will win because their nation gives them everything they need to win, and they will use those resources without mercy until we are all dead." This is the truth our leaders should have told us. We are samurai fighting with swords against men with machine guns, who also have the spirit of samurai. There was never any hope. There was only death. His bunker fell the next day. The Marines who cleared it found his diary and forwarded it to intelligence officers who translated it and filed it among thousands of similar documents. The words captured a truth that Japanese soldiers across the Pacific had learned through brutal experience. Fighting the Marines was not like fighting other American forces. It was not like fighting British or Chinese or any other enemy. It was fighting an opponent who combined everything Japan claimed to possess with everything Japan lacked. That combination made the Marines the most feared enemy Japanese soldiers would face. The statistics tell part of the story. The battles tell more. But the words of Japanese soldiers who survived to tell of it reveal the complete picture. They fought men who would not stop, who would not surrender, who would die before accepting defeat, and who had the weapons and support to make that spirit devastating. Against such an enemy, courage was not enough. Training was not enough. Determination was not enough. Nothing was enough except surrender or death. The Japanese military chose death. The Marines delivered it with systematic efficiency. That was why Japanese soldiers feared fighting the Marines more than any other unit. The Marines said they would take the objective, and they took it. They said they would accept any cost, and they paid it. They never stopped. Japanese defenders discovered that courage meant nothing when facing an enemy who matched their determination and exceeded their firepower by factors that made resistance futile. That was the lesson learned in blood from Guadalcanal to Okinawa. After the war ended and propaganda dissolved, Japanese veterans acknowledged the truth their leaders had hidden. The Marines were everything Japan claimed its soldiers were, backed by everything Japan could never provide. Against such an enemy, the war was lost before it began. The Marines proved it completely, one island at a time, at a cost measured in thousands of lives on both sides.